Thank you.
So.
Do you want me to fly this?
Yeah, you go. Since I've got no friends.
Do you want me to find Bruce?
No, Bruce is unfortunately had to go to a funeral.
Okay.
Okay, so just wanted to recap where we were when we did the draft annual plan position, and when we went into we released the draft annual plan. Inflation, our position that we had taken at that stage was to hold the LTP position of 2.1% and review again in April, May. Interest rates, we knew that there was going to be increasing interest rates, but again, it was one of those things we needed to review post-draft. Our rating growth, every year we set the rates based on the rating growth, so the closer we can get to that 1st of July date is when we get more accuracy in regards to what that rating growth would be. So we've always taken a conservative approach in the drafts of being about 0.8%. And risks. COVID and Ukraine and other geopolitical things are going to continue to be a risk, and we need to continue to monitor those and how they impact us. Thanks, Peter. So inflation. So we have taken a further review of inflation and whether that 2.1% remains to be appropriate. Our recommendation at this stage is to look at, and what we have done in the revise is we've looked at specific risk areas, things like some of the contract maintenance areas, our electricity, our insurance, and some of our procurement savings we've considered. And we always look at staff remuneration in a separate area. We don't just put an inflationary adjustment on that. However, we are suggesting that we put an additional provision for this year of 1% to our remaining OPEX costs. So that moves it from the 2.1% inflationary to 3.1%. And that is a reflection of where we are at this stage and where with rising inflation. No adjustment to the CapEx program because, as you'll be aware, we manage that in a different way in regards to the movement of how things are happening. But there is still risk. Even with this recommendation, there is that we will need to continue to manage it during the year, and there is a potential that if inflation continues, that there may need to be a potential further catch-up in the following year. Why we think this is, what this does, this recommendation that we're putting forward moves our rates increase with all the other, which we'll go through in a minute, from 3.8 to 4.2. That's the impact we're saying, so it's 0.4% by adding that extra. But the rationale behind it is that it achieves a lower rates increase than the draft in regards to this, supporting still, subject to obviously any other proposals or amendments, supporting our residents in rising cost environment. You know, we do recognise that our residents are actually and have a lot of inflationary pressure on them at the moment as well. But also recognising that also the council has cost pressures as well. So it's trying to get that balance. Ensures ratepayers aren't overrated while period of higher inflation is uncertain. So it is still uncertain. It is very much in line with where the markets are saying, but it is still uncertain. Somewhat reduces the risk of higher future year rate increases. So one of the other options we did consider is leaving at 2.1 this year and actually seeing how this plays out. But that just doubles down. If it continues to go up next year, the impact will be even higher and a 1% increase won't be enough. But it does maintain that tension between service delivery and budget management. It means we do need, and I'm not saying we don't do this, but it does mean that we need to continually, it puts more pressure on the organisation to continue to manage their budgets accordingly. And we are conscious on the last 2 years we have had surpluses, a lot to do with the capital program moving out, but we do have had surpluses, so we want to recognise and utilise some of those surpluses for this. Other changes from the draft annual plan to OPEX, interest rates. No surprise, interest rates are continuing to grow. And where this hits us the hardest is new debt borrowing. So our existing borrowing, we have fixed rates of about 80%, 70-80% of our borrowing is already fixed. So we know that means that we know what our interest rates are going to be. But a new borrowing program, which is directly related generally to our capital program, if we've got to borrow in this market, the interest rates are going to be accordingly. And on that basis, the interest rate costs through us have moved. A new borrowing rate has moved from about 3.22 to 3.8. And that has an impact on our numbers. Our rating growth on a positive side, there is the odd positive one. Our 0.8% provision that we'd put in is at this stage being increased to 1.27%, which is an estimated of 2.8 million revenue increase, which is why at the moment we'd moved from that 4.96 in the draft down to the 4.2. Our capital carry forwards. Later on today, you will be hearing a lot more about the capital program and the impact of where we are at the moment. So the capital carry forwards is saying that how much of our capital borrowing have we had to do this year and what we're going to have to carry forward to future years. So we're not going to spend, and that's for a lot of reasons in regards to the COVID environment and our supply chains. So that has an impact because our debt position is not as high as it would have been based on our draft. And that impact, it's just a deferral of a timing. And our surplus, we've talked, now we're not at the year end yet, but our surplus is, we are in a position at this stage forecasting a OPEX surplus, and which that has allowed us to do is repay some of the COVID borrowing that we've taken out. And also we had an additional 7 million that we were intending to borrow this year for COVID, which we won't need to borrow. The good thing about that is it means that our starting debt position is lower and our interest costs are obviously lower. So other things that we are adjusting for at this stage, planning to adjust for, obviously the Parakiori, the metro facility, has now got a delayed opening date from February 23 to September 23. So it means our operational running costs obviously get delayed, so they get pushed out. Southwest Leisure Centre, the delay again in opening, again, same thing, impacts the running costs on that. So it's pushed out to the following year. Revenue from parking and the bus interchange. So post-COVID impact, we have got reduced revenues that are coming from that area. So again, we've had to offset that and take a new focus on that. And the Burwood landfill, we've got a new consent granted that wasn't intended, so we'll continue to operations until FY24, which has positive impact on our revenues. We are recommending 2 additional compliance officers in regards to short-term accommodation activity monitoring, surplus land management facilities funding requirement for progressing surplus land to sale or reuse, the Barry's Bay landfill remediation, an additional 0.15 million or 150,000 expected cost to remediate the non-compliant landfill, and our community rates remissions growth. We've increased the planned growth that we are seeing through there by another 150,000. So, taking all of those things into account, but pre any submission decisions or councillor amendments, where the starting point is, we started a draft annual plan that we consulted on at a rates increase of 4.96. The net changes for all of those things that I have been talking about, including that inflationary adjustment, is a negative 0.8. So our current proposed position for this current year is for FY23 is 4.2. As we said, we are looking in the next month to adopt an annual plan for next year, but what we always want to keep an eye on is those future years. And you can see the impact of some of those in those future years. Now, obviously, we will have another annual plan next year and we'll be able to make, decisions or adjustments to them, and we'll have another LTP by the FY24-25 year. But that is where we are now.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. I've got Pauline.
Well, thank you. Can you just give me a little bit more information on the community rates remissions growth? That applies to charitable trust status organisations, I assume?
Yes, correct.
And so obviously they're ones who own property. So are you saying that they're increasing more and more every year in number? Is that
yes.
So have you got trends on that over the years?
I haven't. I can come back to that.
It's just quite interesting because we need to be able to look and see what that's going to mean for us in the future.
Yep. Can do that. I haven't got the data here though, but I can bring that back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was my question. I did have one more, Leanne, sorry.
Yep.
If I may, about the Burwood landfill, so that's just for one more year that can operate?
Consent has been granted for one more year.
And so why is that? Because the demand is there with the building materials, is it? I think Lynette's
I'm looking around me to see. Helen, can you answer that?
About the Burwood landfill, do you know anything about that?
It should be Lynette.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing.
It was a temporary extension.
So why would it not be continue on if there's a demand for it?
It may, but I think that 1 year is the extension under the resource consent,
and we
Yes.
would need to get another resource consent, but it'd be best to check with
Yeah.
Lynette when she gets back in.
And so,
I can help.
does
you.
that also capture the gas out there? That one? But there is one in Burwood that does capture gas, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I can help you a little bit here. The extension of the Burwood thing is only for contaminated soils from hail sites and stuff like that. There's no demolition wood or anything like that going in there, and it's just using it to fill up voids on the side of the big hill to make it all look nice and smooth. It would be good if it continued on, because putting my Transwaste hat on, we don't really want all the contaminated soil, which it's not bad if it comes from a hail site like an old orchard or something like that. We don't want all that up at Cape Valley because it'll just fill the hole and there's nothing wrong with it really, but Burwood's the ideal place. But we will need to look sometime for somewhere else to put it. But it's just dirt. It's just dirt. You won't see rubbish and concrete in it. It's just dirt.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Jimmy Chen.
Yeah, regarding the South Station Centre delay for 7 months, I just want to know, staff office already consider all those factors like COVID, like supply chain, like hydrotherapy, the procurement process, detailed design, all consider whether further delay or not.
I can't answer that at this stage, Councillor. That best information that we've had at this date is where it's going to get delayed to that date. But as we all know, we're in a very interesting circumstances at the moment, and the teams, they're still working to deliver on those dates.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll move along. Thank you very much. OPEX changes. Oh, sorry, Yanni had a question on the financial. No? We'll go on to OPEX. Right, thank you, Lynn. Not Lynn.